So what we're going to do, we're going to make a new location. In this case, because I'm going to bring in the trees data and the tree survey grid, I'm going to call it pseudo Mercator because we know that's the projection of it. We'll go next. We will try to read the projection and datum terms from the Geo-Referenced data file. We'll then search on our computer. In my case, it's in here. You know what? I have to download it onto this particular computer because I don't think I have any of them. So let me just pause the video real quick while I do that. Okay, so here we are. We're going to select our geo-referenced file. In my case, I'm just going to select the trees survey grid because I know it's in the pseudo Mercator. So remember, this is what a shapefile looks like. There are 5 individual files. You always want to select the one that says .shp. However, if you're sending shapefiles, for example, to your professor by email, you must send all 5 of those things, otherwise it won't work. All right? The easiest way is to zip them all up into one zip archive, but if you can't do that, you have to send all 5 of them as 5 individual attachments. Just FYI. All right? So we'll select that. We'll hit next. What it's doing is reading the projection information from the metadata that's embedded in one of those 5 files, and it's reading it here. Now, if you were in QGIS and you went to properties or CRS of the file, change CRS, and you just type stuff in, you would be changing these numbers, but you would not be reprojecting the information. All right, and this would screw grass up if it tried to read it in. Right, it would think it's in some other projection system. It would screw QGIS. It would screw ArcGIS. It would screw everything up in perpetuity for any GIS software that tried to read that file. All right, so that's one of the problems with QGIS is it lets you edit that kind of stuff when you really shouldn't be allowed to edit that kind of stuff. You should only be allowed to actually physically reproject the file. All right, so we'll hit finish. It'll ask me, do I want to import that particular thing into my new location? I'm just going to hit yes. It'll say OK. I don't, in this case, want to make a new map set. So I don't have a digitized tree file at this particular moment. But if I did, I would start the grass session in that location and map set that I just put the tree survey grid in, because I will know that they're going to match up, because they're going to be the same exact coordinate reference system. I would then go to File. I would go to Import Vector Data, Common Import Formats. The code name for this module is v.in.ogr. Grass always has a little code name for every single thing that you can do in Grass. There's always a little code name. And if you remember those things, you could even type them on the command line if you want to impress all your friends. So it brings in this dialog here, and quite simply, you do pretty much the same thing. Browse. Navigate somewhere on your computer. I think the city limits is in the same projection system, so I'll just show you. Select again the .shp for a shapefile. Click Open, and now it'll bring in the file here. This is the name of the layer that you want to import. This is the output name. You can edit here if you want to. It's usually best to just leave it the same so you don't get confused. All right, and then you hit Import. Now, if these things were not in the same projection system, you would get a big error right here. And it would say something like, cannot import this data. They don't overlay. They're not in the same projection system. Check your data and make sure. All right. If you are absolutely certain, that they really are in the same projection system, yet it's still giving you that error, you can override it in some of these options over here. But you don't typically want to do that, okay? You just usually would want to go back to the source of the data and just check and make sure everything's good. Make sure you didn't accidentally edit the metadata in QGIS or something like that. That would be a big source of a problem if you were absolutely sure they should align, okay? So at this point, I've got 2 pieces of data in there. I've got the city limits and I've got the grid, right? The survey grid. You would have also your tree survey points. You would want to bring that into this pseudo Mercator location. Those would be the 3 shapefiles that would be in that projection system if you set up everything correctly. Now, if you didn't set up the tree points in the pseudo Mercator projection in QGIS, you could also run into a problem there initially. So remember I showed how to do that to make sure that the project was in the pseudo Mercator projection system. Then when you made the new vector file layer to start editing, that should also be in pseudo Mercator projection. If somehow you didn't do that, you would also have a problem importing into this particular location because it would be in probably some different projection system, potentially a latitude, longitude of some kind, all right? So that could be a stumbling block for sure. If you've gotten past this point, you got your, let's say these three layers, the city limits, the survey grid, and your tree points. That's great. That means you did everything right in the beginning and you got to this point. But you're not finished at this point, all right? Because you can't actually bring in the SRTMs directly into this location. You can't bring in the like historic buildings and the parks and stuff into it, okay? So at this point, if you want to bring in those things, again, the easiest way is to just quit grass at this particular moment and then restart grass again. I'm doing it the nerdy way by typing it into my command line, but that's okay. We'll make a new location again. I'm just going to do another lat long like that, all right? But I'm just going to, in this case, call it San Diego just so I know what I'm doing. I can delete this later when I don't need it. In this case, I'm going to read the projection from a geo-referenced file. And I'm just going to browse to back to my Lemon Grove GIS resources that I downloaded from Blackboard. I'm going to find the historic buildings because that's the one I really want to bring in. I'm going to hit the SHP file again. I'm going to hit open. I'm going to hit next. Now you'll see this is slightly different from before, whereas before it said Mercator or something like that. Now it's saying LCC. So it's actually reading in the projection information from that particular file. All of the rest of this is information about that projection information. All right. We'll hit finish. It'll say, do you want to import that particular piece of data you pointed me at? I'll say, yes, please. Click OK. In this case, I don't want to make a new map set. All right. I'm going to start now on my lat long SD permanent grass map set. Start up grass again. And now I can show you that it brought in the historic buildings, right? Historic buildings is there. Click OK. There they are. I know that the cultural resources map is in the same projection system. I can do exactly the same thing. Import vector data, common formats, v.in.ogr. Again, navigate to the cultural resources, SHP, open. Right, shows up here. I can change the name if I want to. Just hit import, and there it goes. Right. So it's imported all of them. Right now we're looking at both the historic buildings and the cultural resources, which in Lemon Grove, that means museums, basically. Okay. Now, if I tried to import my trees into this location, I'd have an error. It would say wrong projection format, wrong location information, right? So what I want to do is have these two pieces of information and the other two pieces of information overlay with each other. Okay. If all I wanted was to bring in, for example, the trees to overlay on this, and I didn't want to do any statistical analysis, I could reproject directly from here. I could bring in the trees by reprojection into this latitude, longitude format. All right. Remember, however, if you want to do math, especially measuring distances and stuff like that, latitude and longitude projection systems are really difficult for that. In some cases, the module will not run in a latitude, longitude projection area. All right. Some of them will run and they'll try and do it, but most of them will not run. All right. So just to demonstrate that I could bring in the grid, right? I'll show you how to do that. So remember, I'm in the latitude, longitude, and I'm going to bring the grid from the pseudo Mercator into this so that they overlay together. I would go to Vector, Develop Vector Map, and then go down to Reproject Vector Map from different grass location v.proj. This is the mathematical tool for physically warping the file according to the mathematical procedure that's in the software. All right, it knows what projection it is in currently. It knows what projection you want it to be in, and it knows the formula that it has to apply to make the warp happen statistically correct. Okay, so you have to do this consciously in grass in order for them to be able to overlay with each other. All right, so here's what v.proj looks like. It's pretty simple. Location containing input vector map. I'm going to go to my pseudo Mercator right here, click on it. Map set, in this case there's only one called permanent, but you'd have to find the map set of the file that you want to reproject. And then the name of the vector map. We only have two, so it's going to show you all the vector maps that are in that map set. I'm going to pick trees survey grid. I could change the output name. I could change a few other things, but actually in this case it doesn't really matter. So we'll just hit run. You may get errors at this point like this. In this case, the problem is probably that the projection information is incomplete. One thing you can try is to disable wrapping. Pseudo Mercator projections sometimes have this problem where they try to wrap around the globe. This might work, or it might still break right here. There used to be a force, let's see, force projection system. Let's see. Let me change this. So in this case, it's not going to let me reproject this file because there's actually probably an error in the projection information that we read in the beginning. So is this happening to a lot of you when you're trying to do this? Okay. This is a bigger problem. This is systemic to creating the data in QGIS, I think. So don't worry about this at the moment here, all right? I can work on how to actually fix this. What it would mean is going back to the original data files and changing some information about them. So let's leave that aside for the moment, but if this had worked right now, you would have reprojected the grid or the trees or whatever they were into it, into the new grass location to where you could overlay them. Let's see if we can go back the other way, yeah?
So what you said, if you did reproject those that way, it would mess up your tables wouldn't be correct, right? Or as far as the location on the map goes. So your statistical overlays wouldn't work?
The statistical overlays would still work in a latitude, longitude projection system, but if you try to do like something that was more statistically rigorous, like calculating a slope or something like that, it wouldn't work. It would probably give you an error and say, we can't do this in this particular location system, right? The statistical overlays would work. They may be a little bit off, like in terms of their precision. They may be a little bit off. All right, so let's see if we can reproject the other way. If I open up that pseudo Mercator and then bring in the buildings to it. So let me just try that real quick and see if it works. Okay, pseudo Mercator, Stargrass, vector, develop vector, reproject. And let's go to that lat long SD with its permanent map set and try and do the historic buildings and see if we can move that the other way. So it's a problem with the pseudo Mercator projection. There's some information that's missing with it. All right. So I'll tell you what, forget about that part. If you're having problems with it, I will work on a way to fix that, because we're going to have to actually fix that before we give the data to Lemon Grove. At the moment, if you can't do the statistical overlays in grass, that's fine. All right. We can try to do it in QGIS. I can show you maybe how that might work. Yeah.
We did it like for the tree. Is it better? Okay, because I only have trees in mine. I don't have anything else in my square.
Yeah.
So I was trying to. So when we did it, we right click and save it under WGS folder.
Yeah.
So it's better to bring it in as a new.
So what you did is you changed the projection
Yeah.
data without actually reprojecting it.
Yeah.
One thing we could try to do is reproject within QGIS and then bring that into grass. So maybe that's a way to get around this. So if we go to, let's say, the tree survey grid right here, we would get the processing and toolbox. By the way, this is how you get the reprojection tool. So processing toolbox. It brings up this thing over here. And the easiest way to find it, there's a little search box here. Just type reproject, right? And then it actually shows you the tools. So it has warp, reproject, this is for rasters, and then vector general tools, reproject layer, this is for vectors. All right. So if we open that up, actually, let me load this thing into the layer manager. Just makes my life a little easier. So there it is, tree survey grid. Okay. And the target CRS, this is what we would have to change. We would want to find it. So right now it's reading it in its pseudo Mercator projection of some kind. We want to change that. So now we have to physically reproject it. So we could do it in a variety of ways. There's this WGS84 lat long. We could actually put it into a UTM projection from here directly, right? So as opposed to grass, where you make a location in some projection system and you pull the data and it reprojects as it's pulling it in. Here, you open the data as it is, and then you tell it what you want it to be, and you push it out into a new file. All right. So let's just say, in the interest of time, I'll just pick this WGS84 latitude longitude one, EPSG 4326. And that should then make it overlay with the historic buildings, okay? So we'll just click OK. And we want to give it a name, right? So save to file, and then LG GIS resources. And I'm going to call this, I'm just going to make a new folder here called ServGrid WGS84, just so I know what it is. And then inside that, I'm going to call it the same exact thing, the actual file, ServGrid WGS84. It's a shape file. I'm going to hit save. Then I'm going to hit run, and it did it. And so if I went to my computer now, under LGGIS resources, which, where is it? There we are. You'll see that that was the original one, tree survey grid, with its 5 shapefile files in there, its shapefile in there. And then the one I just made is this one called ServGrid WGS84, and it's got the shapefile in there. And it should now be in a WGS84 latitude longitude projection system. So if I start grass up again, and I go to my lat long SD, and I enter into it, now I should be able to import it directly with v.in.ogr, because the projection systems should be the same as the ones that are in there. So let's see if that'll actually happen. Import vector data, common import formats, v.in.ogr. We'll browse to my Lemon Grove GIS resources, survey grid, WGS84 shapefile. It shows me the layer name here. Just do that. Okay, so there you go. That's worked. Now I can actually grab my historic buildings, for example, and they'll show up too, right? So if you still want to do this, probably that's the way we have to do it, is to reproject from within QGIS to a new shapefile and then bring them into this single grass location like this. And I would say this is fine for now. Don't worry about putting it in a UTM or anything like that for the moment. Just import the historic buildings and the parks or whatever you want into a new grass location based on that file's projection information. Then from within QGIS, select your trees file and the survey grid or whatever you want, reproject them to a new shape file in the WGS84 latitude longitude. Then you could bring those also into the same grass location, and you can overlay them. You can do your statistical overlays as well, for the most part. All right.
So I have everything in the pseudo Mercator.
Yeah.
Then all of them QGIS.
Okay.
I brought them into grass. Is that?
That'll be fine. As long as you can get them in the same grass location for now, that'll be fine. Yeah, that'll be fine. So any questions about that so far still? No? This one big hiccup, I think, was the pseudo Mercator projection system. Somehow when we read it in through Google Earth or whatever, it was kind of broken. Right? But this is how it is. This is how it always is. In fact, if I could tell you how many hours I've spent in my life trying to troubleshoot these kind of issues with projections and that kind of stuff. So it's a good actually learning moment, to be honest with you, because this is literally something that you will be faced with again in the future if you decide to go on in GIS. So we troubleshooted it actually pretty quickly this time, but there are times when it is a lot more difficult to do it. So hopefully you'll have sort of some of these, I guess, ideas to check, you know, when things go wrong, what is commonly at fault, right? Typically, it's probably something to do with the little bits what we call metadata that tell the software about the projection information. For whatever reason, QGIS produced a semi-corrupt metadata. It didn't have a problem with it, but GRASS did, right? And so the solution at that point was to, from within QGIS, right your wrongs, but doing it the proper way with the proper tool for reprojection, not simply editing the metadata because we didn't know what the problem is with those pieces of information, right? So since QGIS seemed to have no problem with it, if we reproject it, it basically rewrote a new file with a new set of projection information in a different projection system, and then that was all fine and came into GRASS from there. That makes sense? So good, sort of. All right. This, again, with many of these things, and I don't even know, I can't stress it enough, right? Practice real world situations and fail a lot, actually, at doing it. And then you will still fail in the future, but you will at least fail less frequently, and you'll have some sense of why whatever you tried to do failed and what you might try to fix it. All right? So this is actually a really good learning moment, okay? Is this good for now in terms of Project 1? Is there other things that people need?
Not anymore.
Yeah. So again, you can work on this to your heart's delight until whatever it is, midnight or whatever I made the due date. But again, don't stress about that stuff. Like, I understand completely. Right? I'm not going to take points away because the software didn't work for you. That's just bad, right? So all I want to actually do really with these projects is to see that you practiced, right? That you tried applying the information and the knowledge and the skills that we're learning in class, and that you were thoughtful about it, right? And everyone so far as I can tell, is doing all of those things. So we're okay, right? We're okay. All right, I'm going to stop the recording for now.